I'm back. The doctor has cleared me to go back to work. My hair plug surgery failed, thanks to all the people who donated different scalp samples and toupees, but I'm back to square one. But it's time to talk about the Jetta GLI Autobahn edition. We're gonna cover everything, and I fired Jack because he was encroaching on my popularity, and the fact that he was half Asian gave him a huge edge up in the diverse crowd that watches this. So now that he's gone, it's back to my way. Yeah. Oh yeah. The Jetta GLI Autobahn edition. What's Autobahn about it? Not sure, unless there's an Autobahn in Mexico I don't know about, because that's where this gem is made. You might want to know about the interior. It feels like a four-door GTI without the hatch. It's got a trunk. So all the typical neat VW features are in here. So the big changes are this. Well, I can't find a lot, but this is what I'm noticing. They've gone to an all LCD gauge cluster, which you're seeing in Audis and VWs now. And graphically, it's well done. There's certain things for customization. If you want to go to more of a traditional tachometer, speedometer setup, you have that. If you want displays that don't tell you any driving information, you can look at Bluetooth, whatever. It's pretty configurable, not as configurable as I would like from a technology standpoint, but it does look good. The black levels are good. It's not crazy bright at night. You got to look at it yourself. The infotainment screen, I've said this about previous VW products, the black levels, the contrast levels are really good, and at night it's not searing your retinas, so you can literally have both screens on and not get a headache. All your physical controls, knobs, buttons, and switches are extremely well laid out. Your light switch, your HVAC controls that shows you the temperature down here without having to go to the touch screen to constantly interact with that. Your shifter is physical. They haven't gone to a digital stick. This has the dual clutch option, not the manual transmission. And you know, everything else is simple. Most anybody's going to get in here and feel non-intimidated. Now I have to talk about materials, so let's get into that. Often when you talk about material choices on an interior space, a lot of this can be subjective, and I hear this a lot. When I say things look plasticky, somebody's like, well, every car company has plastics on their interior. Well, of course, but it's the way that they're done, the diversity, the choices, the textures, the way things fit together, and the way that they look or appear can make a big impact on a space. A lot of this is aesthetic design, and this interior space looks plasticky as hell. So let me talk about what that means. The door panels are a great example. You do have some kind of textured looking plastics that look softer, and then you get to the hard plastics, namely at the bottom of the door, and it just looks like they spent $0 on designing some of this. Now the counterpoint is, I had a very special person in this car, and they said, I love all the hard plastics. That means it's gonna be easy to clean up, which I don't know what they meant by that, meaning if they were gonna have an adult style party in the back where you're getting fluids everywhere, or if you're gonna have a pet or a kid who's gonna be spitting up, excreting waste on the seats, you might be able to clean it up better with an interior that has a lot more hard, less porous surfaces. Again, the main thing with VW is they have a very sterile aesthetic. It's a very clean design, and some of the material choices, you may like it or you may not. Overall, everything feels really good, well put together. It's just a very kind of bland, monochromatic interior space. All right, now that that's over with, one of the main considerations of getting on the interior space of a sedan is comfort and usability. Let's talk about the seats. Now, this does have this very pleatherish feel, but the ergonomic design, the way that you fit, the adjustability of the seats are great. You can be tall, you can be wide, you can be thick, you can be skinny, and there's just a way that you can adjust the steering wheel around you and still feel secured in the seat while not feeling suffocated. So the point is, a wide variety of body types are gonna fit in here. There's a decent amount of headroom. You can literally fit adults in the back seat in comfort and go on longer trips. This feels like a bigger car. And the storage nooks are the same. You have this monstrous center cubby console here, although it's kind of hampered by this USB port, which makes no sense why it takes up so much room. The door pockets are immense. You could fit, if you're somebody that has a huge reusable metal water can that you use, you can fit that in the door space. Granted, this isn't felt lined like the GTI or the German GTI that I was in, but there's so many like little places to put your stuff. There's this kickstand and the armrest to kind of raise it up just in case you're a bigger person or your elbow's at a strange angle. There's a lot of touches like that that make it that great car that you want to drive every day. Now, I think that's enough of talking about the interior space. Let's head into the shop and take a look at the underbody before we take it for a drive. Underneath the VW Jetta GLI, and much like many of the other VWs we've looked at that are on the MQB architecture, they take their core architecture and they scale it out for different vehicles. So basically anything front wheel drive or the ability to have all wheel drive looks almost identical here. Now in the case of this car, the Jetta, it's very similar to what we saw in the GTI. Now here's kind of the key things that you notice right away. They do have a cooling duct here that's just built into the under tray to help flow air over the gearbox, the DSG gearbox. You also notice that they haven't completely covered up the underbelly here for the oil pan and the Haldex front differential, which is the magic that makes this car better to drive because you have a limited slip differential in the front. You can utilize and put down that power, which we'll talk about in the driving segment. But all of this is open for airflow, which is not typical with a lot of the more economical cars now. They cover up this whole underbelly. They have, a lot of vehicles have this feltish composite covering in the wheel wells. We call it carpet because it helps to reduce NVH. But the Jetta has none of that. It just has the traditional plastic panels to help flow air in the back, which reduces drag. Now, everything else is stamped steel. Your subframe, which is here, your carrier, your lower control arms are stamped steel, but they do utilize an aluminum front knuckle on both sides up to the struts. You have non-adjustable dampers here, which is a blessing and a curse. You're starting to see more and more companies go to adaptive dampers because it gives them more flexibility and ride control. This is definitely on the more medium to softer side. But that's enough of the front end. Let's take a look at the back. In the back half of the GLI, this is where it starts to look like pretty much every other budget economy car until you start looking a little bit closer. And I looked at some of the pinch welds, the underbody coatings and the sealers are good here, and it looks like it would be pretty corrosion resistant in the winter with salt and all that. The second thing I noticed is just how well they kind of designed this back half or the middle part with flattening things out. And it starts at the underbelly in the middle where your resonator's flat. The fuel tank design is pretty flush with and level with that area, all the way to the back where the base of the load floor is surprisingly flat, along with the muffler design that has real exhaust tips here. And you know, that eliminates the need for a ton of paneling, although it could probably use it. And when you look at this, you can see this is where the platform sharing comes in, because you have this enormous space here where the split fuel tank would go for if you had a drive shaft running over or through this part, which this car doesn't have. But again, you see all the spaces that could be changed and modified for other vehicles. But other than that, everything is stamped steel in the back, subframe, lower control arms. They do have aluminum knuckles here, much like the front. But other than that, really, that's it for the back half of the Jetta. I'm in the GLI Autobahn Jetta. Let's set off. I don't want sport. I want manual. Oh, it auto upshifts. Well, where's the fun in that? But I have a dual clutch gearbox, so technically I should be able to downshift and it's quick. Ooh. It's pretty zesty. Yeah, the auto upshifting kind of kills the fun, but the transmission is remarkably quick, namely to downshift. Now, yes, it sounds like a vacuum cleaner, and of course there's artificial engine noise to augment that, so I will turn the wherever the hell the drive control mode is to normal to eliminate some of that. Now, as you drive the Jetta, it's very, very similar to what you experience in the GTI hatch. And that's a good and a bad thing, because a lot of the driving dynamics that make that car so much fun to drive are here. But it's still front-wheel drive, of course. So you get a lot of the weird things that happen with that. And when you're driving with the traction control on, yes, you have the Haldex front differential, which helps to pull you through turns and makes corrections. But when you have the traction control on, it is absolutely hyperactive. And because of the way the front differential works, even with traction and stability control kind of off, where the sport mode's always on, you always feel a slight interference. And that's the same thing with the new GTI. But the deal is with it, at least you have a limited slip differential. It is a mechanical system, and I just got out of the Accord 2-liter turbo, and the problem with that car is it heavily relies on the stability control system to keep all of the power sorted out, which means you constantly see this flashing light, you constantly feel the power being pulled, because it doesn't have a mechanical way to distribute the power to the front end. This car does. So that's one of the things, it interferes with your driving and your fun part of driving when you're being a little bit more of a creep on the road. You have a much more connected feel to this car, more confidence that the front tires are going to be glued when you're turning, when you have pretty much everything off. And that's what I like about it a lot. Now, I spoke way too much about that already, the ride quality. This is the only thing that I feel like this car does not particularly do well over really harsh pavement. There's this tendency to kind of like hop, or I feel a couple times where the suspension literally hit the bump stops over sudden shocks to the pavement. And I think that's kind of a big downer. But when you're on flat pavement, like I just got through, the combination of the Haldex front, the way the suspension's set up, it's a much better car for driving fast on, well, just pavement that isn't all choppy. So you're trading off a little bit of performance for some of the ride quality that you lose. And I think most people that are going to be buying this are okay with that. Now, in terms of straight line acceleration, you know, this isn't going to be something that blows you away, but there is a ton of torque. So off the line, I'm not going to brake torque this. We're going to put this in whatever, sport mode, whatever that means. Now I'm going to leave this in sport mode and see how it gets off the line without brake torquing it. And I've noticed right away when I'm holding the brake, the RPMs are up slightly to kind of reduce turbo lag. This is going to have a huge wow factor for somebody that's never been in one of these modern turbocharged cars, because what it feels like is once you get over that initial slow lag at the start, you feel the turbo kind of like propelling you. You feel the torque. It feels like you have a huge push from behind you, that like a force pushing the car forward. It just feels effortless. Now, you know, of course, that's at the sacrifice of okay, then the turbo comes on and then it feels smooth. But I think most people that are going to drive this are really going to love it. And the huge benefit of this is the fuel economy. I drove the other day and I did a 40-mile trip, and I looked down and it was showing me 42 miles to the gallon. Now, granted, I had it in normal mode and then I did it in eco mode and it was about the same. And I think that's the best part about this. You can literally have fun, to a certain extent, fun as you can have for a front-wheel drive car. You have the comfort, you have the great interior space, and you have a little bit of performance that balances it all together. And that's something VW has done very well compared to a lot of the competitors. Because usually there's something to seriously complain about. And in here, the only thing is I just don't like the way that it handles over broken pavement. But that's just only a slight issue compared to the way that they've assembled everything else. So that's enough of this. Let's head and talk about the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Jetta GLI Autobahn edition. If you're looking for more technical detail, watch my Golf GTI video. That covers so much detail that applies here. But I'm going to go right into the pros and cons. VW has started to get ahead of the curve here a little bit with the whole sedan thing. People are kind of turned off by them right now in the market. So they've added some character, some fun to drive back into this. You have a manual transmission, you have a dual clutch automatic, and the only negative there is the dual clutch automatic strips away the fact you don't have full manual control. It will auto upshift. But everything else about it is really good. The interior space is super comfortable, it's usable, it's practical, the electronics work. The seats are designed to fit a wide variety of body types, and you have a decent amount of trunk space. Now, the negative part about it is the styling is very plain Jane. It's very sterile like most Audi products, and most people will be bored by it. But I think most people would rather be bored and have it kind of age gracefully than to have it overstyled and look just kind of hideous. And I think, that's something you have to decide. That's a big subjective part. The best part about the GLI Autobahn is it has a mechanical limited slip differential in the front, and it's just proof to me that any car with torque and horsepower to the front wheels needs it. It's a good investment to do it. It transforms the driving experience. And when you get out of a car like the Accord, which is a much bigger vehicle, it's more of a tourer, but their sporty version, you get all this horsepower and torque, and all it does is the electronics interfere. Traction, stability control, always cut in, always hampered, and you don't feel a strong connection to the car. Whereas the Jetta, you do, and it's more fun to drive because of it. You can literally pound it around and still feel like you're in something a little bit more purpose-built for having fun, but then you go back to driving normally, you still get good fuel economy, you still get the comfort aspect, and a lot of the good things that VW is known for. Now, the biggest negative here was we did our typical audio testing, and they've switched to Beats Audio, which I'm pretty sure is still Panasonic, with a Beats Audio name on it. And the testing went horrible, and I'm not posting the results because I believe that it had a blown speaker or an amplifier problem. It didn't matter what volume it was at, it sounded horrendous. It was one of the worst vehicles I'd ever been in terms of testing, but I'm gonna give it a pass here because I do feel like there was a hardware problem with this car, but that's why you're not gonna see results on this. But it's something you definitely wanna check out because Beats Audio in cars, at least the ones we've tested, are some of the worst. So if you're audiophile sensitive, check that out. But the last part is, what sedan do you choose? My top three really are this Jetta GLI at this point, the Accord Sport, or any Accord. If you want a touring car, the regular Accord's way better. It's bigger, it's more comfortable, but if you want the sporty stuff, you go to the Sport with a turbo and a manual trans, or you go to a Mazda6 Signature or a Mazda6. Those are the three that I would look at, and I think the GLI Autobahn edges them both out in kind of the fun to drive factor. May not be the biggest, best interior, best styling, but it blends the fun to drive aspect. So if that's what you favor, well, this is a big win. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
I'm on my laptop right now. This is the gentleman you're leaving me for? Very well. I hate the savage geese. I'm going to show you how to get rid of them. Just like this.
God, does this thing sound like a fucking vacuum cleaner?